I'm so excited today to be speaking to you about the mission of motherhood. I can just picture wonderful moms of different ages and different backgrounds coming together to really talk about the importance of your calling, because I do think motherhood is a calling. I remember when I was a little girl, one of my favorite memories about my mom was her hands. My mom is so funny because she said, "Oh my goodness, I don't have beautiful hands." But to me, her hands were beautiful because I can remember even as a small child, I had asthma and I had so many middle of the night bouts with struggling with breathing, and my mom would put her hand on my forehead and she would soothe me and she would talk with me and tell me stories and sing to me. I remember other times, and I can so clearly remember this, that when we would sit in church, and I was a very active child, and I had a hard time just sitting still, and my mom would take our hands and take our fingers, and she would pull the finger, and then she would go in between. And she made it last a long time, and you were just waiting in your mind, oh, she's going to do one more finger, and then she would do the other hand, and sure enough, before I knew it, we had gotten through the whole sermon. And I remember another time I had a recurring dream, and she came and she put lotion in my hands, and she loved me. And I think that mothers are undersold today. As a matter of fact, I really believe that God created mothers to be those women who would particularly have the work, the great work of forming and creating and shaping the soul and the conscience and the values and the morals and the mind of those children who'd be the next generation. Women have a particular love for excellence, for beauty, for creativity, for relationships. And I think that with our design, our hormones, our makeup, our relational skills, that when mothers attend to this great calling of motherhood, that there is hope for the next generation. There will become a history of adults who will be great people because they have been given the focus and the preparation and the care that every generation deserves. Now, unfortunately, there has been a confusion, and we hear all sorts of voices and all sorts of different philosophies in our generation. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came to this whole book project and this whole video project myself. Because when I became a mom, I was pretty confused. I had been trained all my life just through the generation that I grew up in, the philosophy, books, through my professors. I had been trained to, quote unquote, do something important with my life, which to me meant having a job. And so after I graduated from college, I went to work with a Christian organization. I worked with university students for 2 years. Then I moved to Vienna, Austria, where I traveled in many different countries and worked, and eventually moved into Poland. And so I got a lot of my kudos out of my career, teaching, speaking, writing, doing things that really challenged me in my own personal skills and in my own personal arena. But then I got married when I was a little bit older, when I was 28, 29, and I married my husband, and after a couple of years of marriage, I had my first child when I was 31 years old. And I had not been prepared to be a mom. I had a great mother in her own arena. She loved me. She did many things to cultivate my life, but I didn't know how I would fall in love with my little girl, Sarah. I remember when she came out, I was almost surprised that she was a baby. I was so excited. She was a failure to thrive baby. I had to love her and nurse her and help her come back to full health. And I absolutely adored her. And as I was rocking her and singing to her one night and realized that her smiles were reserved just for me, she loved me, and I loved the whole process of nursing her. I'd never even known anybody that did that. And I remembered thinking, it was as though the Lord spoke to me and He said, "Here in your hands, you have the stewardship of a precious little human being whose life will have eternal significance. you have the stewardship of her mind, of her relationships, of her thoughts, of her skills. And it was as though God said to me, what will you do to help this little girl learn to love me so that righteousness can be passed down from one generation to the other? What will you do to teach her morality, to give her skills, to help her love marriage, to help her embrace children? And I began to realize maybe there's more to this whole issue of motherhood than I thought. And I would talk with different women, and one woman said to me, you know, Sally, you should really consider getting your master's or your PhD, master's of divinity, or go to a secular school, because then you could really continue teaching and have a real influence in the world. If you have too many children, it will take up your time. This is from a Christian leader. But another woman said to me, you know, Sally, raising a godly generation is the call, one of the finest bits of work that any woman will do. Because when women give all of their excellence, all of their intelligence to the shaping of leaders for the next generation, then that is how God created us to be able to be those trainers of leaders so that every generation would have a soul that is deep and loved and pure and good and filled with excellence, a mind that can think well. And I have to admit that when I was this 31-year-old mother and heard these things about this precious child that I'd fallen in love with, it began to make sense to me. And so I wrote Mission of Motherhood because I thought God does have a mission. God does have a purpose. Women are called to do many great things in the world, but primarily when they have children, one of the best works they will ever do is to be that person who would take responsibility and stewardship for this precious life. And now I have these great children. They're not perfect. I wasn't perfect, but it's been so exciting for me to see that they are passionate about their life's purpose. They love us. They love the Lord. They're healthy individuals. And shaping my children in the areas of excellence has shaped me to help me become accountable to becoming the best person that I can be. So it doesn't just shape my children, it shaped me in a great way. And I have this wonderful relationship with my children. They're my best friends. They're the people I go to learn about great books and ideas and what's going on in the world. It's what God created us to have, that dynamic, deep relationship with our children. I had 3 children, and then I had a couple of miscarriages, and then at the age of 41, my husband said, you know, I don't want you to take any chances with your health, because I had had a hemorrhage in one of my miscarriages and I had almost died. But my little boy Nathan said, Mommy, I think you should have another little girl. We prayed about it, and sure enough, at almost 42, I gave birth to this precious little girl named Joy. Now I want to tell you a story about her, though, because it really was something God used in my life. After 3 children and then a few breaks and then Joy, I knew this would be my last chance. And Joy was a child who had nocturnal asthma. And so every night when she was a little girl, though I had gone through doctors and had all sorts of medications, I had gone the natural route, the homeopathic medications, but I found that the only thing that really helped Joy to begin breathing well in the middle of the night again was if I would give her some of her medication, and then I would take her into my shower with me, and I would turn the shower on hot, and all of the steam would go into her little lungs, and I would hold her, and I would tell her joy stories. And if I did that, something about the humidity helped her to begin breathing well again. And so we got into this little routine where I would sit on this little ceramic bench in my shower, and I would take her into my hands, and I would say, once upon a time there was a little girl named Joy. And she would either rescue a puppy or find a wallet or pick some flowers. I always had these stories about how she would do something great with her life. And she was 3 years old at the time, had these big black circles under her eyes because of her asthma, and she would be kind of sopping wet, and I would wrap her up in a towel when the hot water had gone, and she was sitting on the cabinet, and she said, you know, Mommy, I've been thinking. And I said, what have you been thinking, Joy? And she said, I've been thinking and thinking about how when I was inside of your tummy, I always hoped and hoped that when I came out, There would be a mommy who would take care of me and love me and tell me joy stories. And even though she was just 3 years old, I think that Joy was expressing what is on the heart of every child. That every child has this God-given design that when they come into the world, they have a desire, a need for there to be loving hands, to accept them, to affirm them, to receive them as a gift, to shape their lives, to protect them, and to guide them. And that's what God has designed you to do. No matter what you do in the other areas of your life, when you have a child, it is a calling of God. It is a calling to use your intelligence and your skills and your mind and your heart and your time in such a way that you have the privilege of shaping children whose souls will last for all eternity. I love the scripture in Psalm 127. It says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it." It says in verse 3, "Behold, children are a gift of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward." When God blesses you with this gift, this child, though there are many challenges and many issues that come up with children, children are that gift from God that because of our love for them, our accountability to have them in our lives, we become better women. We become those who learn how to serve. We become those who learn how to create love and fun and beauty in our home. Our children keep us being moral because we have a reason now to protect the morality of adults in our generation. We have a little child who's looking to us to protect them. So having a child indeed is a calling, a high calling. But I want to end with one more verse that I really love. It's in Titus 2. And as it was speaking, as Paul was writing to women to say, you have an opportunity to do a great work. And this is what he said to the older women. He says, older women are to be reverent in their behavior. We're to be dignified, to be those who other young women would want to revere, would find honor in being with. It says older women are to be reverent in their behavior, not gossips, not malicious gossips, or enslaved to wine. In other words, we aren't to be enslaved to other issues that would take up the focal point of our life, other elements. But it says they are to teach what is good. They may encourage young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be sensible, pure, workers at home, kind, being subject to their own husbands, that the word of God may not be dishonored. It's my privilege as an older woman who has learned a lot, and I've made many mistakes, I've learned many things, to encourage you as young moms not to have regrets, that you didn't give time to your children, that you don't have them closely and tuned to you in a relationship when they're older, but to encourage you to say, when you embrace this calling, when you understand its depth and the variety that it provides, the excellence that it calls you to, that you will be building in your lifetime and in your country a foundation of strength, a moral character that is strong, a sense of life-giving and beauty that you were created to be able to do. It will be the finest thing that you ever do. And so as you read this book, The Mission of Motherhood, I commend you to the Lord. He is the one who will show you how. He is the one who will equip you. He is the one who will call out all of those things that are great in you as you accept those children as a gift, as you learn to love them. And in shaping their souls, you'll be shaped into a magnificent woman. The Lord bless you and keep you as you read this book and have great fellowship together.